Hi, I'm Mart from Mart's Movies Review, and today I'm going to talk about the movies of the director William Friedkin. The movies I'm going to talk about today are The French Connection, The Exorcist, and finally To Live and Die in LA. So starting with The French Connection, which was made in 1971, and it was Friedkin's kind of more popular movie that made him a star director. He had made a few movies before that. He was a documentary filmmaker, he was a TV director, but he got with Peter Distoni, and he started making the script of The French Connection, which was based on a book called The French Connection about the drugs trade between Europe and America in the 1960s. And you had two cops, one Irish American, one Italian American, who did the drugs busts, and it was based on the characters. Their characters were in the film, with Gene Hackman playing the Irish cop who had been in the movie Popeye Doyle. Here's Popeye. And you had alongside him as well Roy Schreider. And the movie, there's a very funny story about the movie, how it came about, how Friedkin cast the movie, and what he wanted to do with the movie. Of course, the famous car chase in the scene throughout the film. He didn't like Gene Hackman, and he had a sit down meeting with Hackman and the casting call. And he sat down with tea or coffee with him, and he didn't really get on with him. He thought he was kind of boring kind of a character. He didn't have the grit, to be a kind of a street detective. So, but it was a very low budget movie, and it was funded by 20th Century Fox, Richard Zanuck's son, Zanuck Jr., and they gave them some money, but they could only spend a short bit of money on the casting. So they had to choose kind of lower wage actors for the roles. So they wanted to make it. They had to choose, what they had little options of which to choose from. So in the end, they choose Gene Hackman and Roy Schreider. And for the French Connection, they wanted an actor from Europe. William Friedkin wanted a certain actor, and he went to the airport to try and collect the actor at the airport, and he's looking around for the actor he wanted to play the parts of the kind of French Connection. And he was looking for him, and he couldn't find him, and he found another Fernando Rey. And Fernando Rey said, "Sure, I don't speak French at all. I'm Spanish." And anyway, they got going on the movie anyway, and they had the two actors in the film who were actually the real life cops. The two actors in The French Connection were Eddie Egan and Sonny Grasso. Eddie Egan and Sonny Grasso were the two men who were portrayed in The French Connection by Gene Hackman and Roy Schreider. There's famous scenes in the film, the start of the movie is very good, but there's the famous car chase in the scene as well. And William Friedkin was very kind of wise, canny kind of guy. He picked actors from movies he had seen previously as well, European films like Z, which is a very good film. And he picked just certain character actors to work with Hackman and Roy Schreider. Yeah, but he said, Friedkin, that he had to kind of really G up Gene Hackman, because Gene Hackman was a kind of a liberal kind of guy. He wasn't really a kind of a tough street character like the Irish American cop he was playing in the film. So he had to put a lot of pressure on him and figure out ways to try and kind of wind him up to get him to kind of let loose with the character. But anyone who's seen the film, it's a great film. It's kind of a detective's procedural thriller, and one of about 5 Oscars. Gene Hackman won Best Actor for his role as Popeye Doyle, and Roy Schreider would go on to do greater things as well. You see in the future, he was in Jaws, he was in All That Jazz. He was in another film as well that D'Antoni, the producer, directed as well, The 7 Ups. So it was an outstanding film at the time, and it's just a kind of an iconic film now. Gene Hackman with the pork barrel hat and the famous car chase in the film. And they had Bill Hickman driving the car. He was the stuntman driving the car in that famous car chase. Now, Bill Hickman was the driver in the film Bullet with Steve McQueen, and they just went for it. They had Billy Friedkin in the back of the car, like filming. They had another car in front of them, and they were basically there were no permits for nothing. There's about 1,000 businesses around them, and they're saying, "Oh, we'd have to ask all these businesses for permits to drive through." And he said, "Well, they're asking Friedkin, what about that?" And he said, "Forget about it." And I did a run through in the car underneath the bridge, chasing a train, and they did it kind of more or less in one take, and you have Hackman, real kind of fear inside in the vehicle, because he did crash into someone. There was a kind of crash and the start again, and they show him in the car, like there's a famous scene that I won't give it away, but he's ruthless in the car chasing, and that was kind of Bill Hickman, stunt car driver. Yeah, the movie worked out amazingly. I mean, because they all thought that the movie was going to go to nothing. Like, I mean, Billy Friedkin wasn't happy, as you said, in the production. Wasn't happy with Gene Hackman as the lead man. I wasn't happy as the lead bad guy. It wasn't Fernando Rey. Didn't even want him. I wanted the other Fernando from the other film we saw. You know what I mean? And yeah, it was just. But in the end, himself and Philip D'Antoni, a fellow producer, yeah, they pulled it out of the bag and they made it a classic. William Friedkin became a kind of superstar after that, because he went on to direct the next film, which was The Exorcist, which is based on William Peter Blatty's book called The Exorcist. And Blatty would go on to make a great cult film later on called The Ninth Configuration. He's very clever how he made his screenplays and scripts work, and he was working then with William Peter Blatty on The Exorcist, and they sat down and went through the book, and Blatty wrote a screenplay, and he showed it to Billy Friedkin, and Friedkin wasn't happy because he took a lot of the stuff out of the book that he felt that wasn't needed, and he left stuff out that should have been in. So himself, he sat down with Blatty himself, and he basically took out the chunks of the book that they were kind of exciting and entertaining and, you know, suspenseful. So he sat down and they fashioned out a script, and he worked on his own little tactics as well to get the performers performing. But in this film, The Exorcist, it was just a kind of mother and daughter story, really. But it shows kind of a mother and daughter living in kind of Georgetown, in a kind of wealthy part of Washington in America, and just how the child is going through supernatural convulsions within the film, and the mother is more of someone who's more kind of secular, and she doesn't really believe in supernatural that much. And just funny, strange happenings happen around this set and scenes. She's an actress as well. And the daughter, she tries everything. She goes to doctors, scientists, everywhere to try and get her help. And then she goes to Father Marek in the end to help. And his assistant helps him, Patrick, and Jason Patrick's father. And there's some chilling scenes in the film, especially around his kind of assistant who's helping him, Father Marek, in the film, like chilling scenes in the room itself with the child, but also with his own mother in the subway, and even little stuff like he has an old man talking to him on the subway in real life. So an ending for any kind of change for an old altar boy father, you know. And then Lucifer himself says that within the child when he's in the room with her. You know what I mean? And it's very chilling. And Mark Kermode finds that moment very chilling as well. It's one of Mark Kermode, the film reviewer's favorite films. He did a thesis on it. He's a Dr. Kermode in Manchester University, and he met his missus there as well. But he did a kind of thesis in horror studies. And anyone who knows Kermode knows that Mark's favorite film is The Exorcist, and he likes Mary Poppins as well, and Silent Runnings. And to this very day, I know it's been made in 1973, but to this very day, The Exorcist is a very shocking film. The way it's filmed, the way the Stadium Cambridge's voice over of the child, and just the body horror and the movements within the room is is very shocking. I saw a funny picture yesterday, actually, they even used the pictures of her doing elevations, her body, and to show a man actually standing on top of her body doing painting, and there's it's used in pop culture now to make light. But at the time, and even to this very day, it's a very, very shocking film to see. And I like the start of the film. They show kind of Babylon, they show in Iraq, and the Exorcist follow-ups. I've only seen bits of them. I've seen like bits of 2 and bits of 3 with George C. Scott, but I watched the the controversial films. There was a few of them. There was the beginning, Exorcist, the beginning, the one I think with Rennie Harlan, and there's one directed by Paul Schrader as well, which was supposed to be better than Rennie Harlan's one because Paul Schrader got sacked because the studio didn't like it and they said it wasn't scary enough. So they brought in Rennie Harlan to do a new version. The guy who directed Die Hard 2 and a few of the movies, and they said his version was worse than Paul Schrader's. But anyway, I have to see the sequels. There's one with Linda Blair, I think, and Richard Burton or William Holden, I think, is in the movie with her. And but those 2 Friedkin movies are absolutely brilliant. Early 1970s. He's the movie then he made later on. I have to see as well. It's a cult classic now called The Sorcerer, but it was kind of washed out with all the Star Wars movies at the time. It didn't really get a look in, and his career kind of faded a bit. Then he made a kind of controversial movie called Cruising, but beyond that, then he kind of had a comeback. Then in the mid 1980s, Billy Friedkin. Now I have to get this right now because it's kind of confusing. The cast of the film To Live and Die in LA. The cast is William Friedkin directing. You have William Peterson, who people know as Grissom in CSI, and you have Willem Dafoe, the kind of bad guy in the film. And it's a story about kind of vanity and burning of vanity in LA in the 1980s, and it's kind of a cops and criminals kind of story about counterfeiting money, and Peterson and his colleague after the criminals and trying to catch them. But it's a very well made film. It's very unpredictable. It's like a film I just saw recently called Triple Frontier, which is made with Ben Affleck. It's a very unpredictable film, and it does stuff in the film that most films are afraid to do because they just they wouldn't see it as mainstream. But the film itself is really well made, and Willem Dafoe is really good in it. I mean, he was just starring in a few roles there himself in a vampire movie, and he got involved in Platoon then, and he was making his way. William Peterson had been made Manhunter, so he should have been a big star, but I think he walked away from it really at the time. But William Peterson, I know he's a big star, a TV star with CSI, and he was in a movie with Mark Wahlberg called Fear. Yet it's a shame really that William Peterson, that he didn't become a bigger star, because he was brilliant in Manhunter with Hannibal Lecter, and he was also with Brian Cox playing Hannibal, and he was really good in To Live and Die in LA. It's a movie you should really check out, and the soundtrack is very good as well. You should listen to that as well. And To Live and Die in LA, there's the Wong Chung did the soundtrack, Dance Hall Days, and they got some more great tunes on the soundtrack. Friedkin is definitely having a comeback with that film, because we have a cop versus criminal. They're both exciting actors, and they're both kind of like just kind of in their prime at the time, because William Dafoe would go on to do Platoon and then Last Temptation of Christ, Mississippi Burning. And then you had, at the same time, you had William Peterson doing the film Manhunter, which is the first of the Silence of the Lambs films, if you want to call them, the Hannibal films. So I'm going to leave that here for this week.